Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Friday, October 18th. Today is day 378 since the attacks by Hamas on October 7th of last year. Breaking news confirmed yesterday, confirmed by the Israeli military, that Yahya Sinwar, the powerful and elusive military leader of Hamas, who's been the #1 target for Israel since the beginning of the war, had been killed in battle. He was considered the chief architect of the October 7th attacks, the military leader of Hamas, the one who set off 13 months of war and violence, plunging the Gaza Strip into a humanitarian crisis and wider conflict that now includes fighting in Lebanon. According to reports, the IDF said soldiers had been patrolling areas in Rafah when a man who has since been identified as Sinwar ran alone into one of the buildings. He was killed after being located by a drone and a firefight in Gaza on Wednesday between Hamas forces and Israeli soldiers, who retrieved his bodies and then, through dental records and fingerprints, both of which were on file, was able to be confirmed. There was no immediate response from Hamas. Initially, his death briefly raised hopes that there could be an end to the conflict that's already killed tens of thousands of people in Gaza, and of course, plunged Gaza into a horrific humanitarian crisis because of Israel's response. Sinwar's death, according to some reports, could encourage Hamas to be more agreeable to Israeli demands. And it gives Israel an opportunity to say that they've been successful. Their goal was to eradicate Hamas. They've killed Hamas's top 2 leaders, the first in the bombing in Tehran, killing the political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, and now killing Sinwar. But still, Hamas and the Israeli government have remained apart on key issues, and it seems like negotiations are no closer to coming to a permanent ceasefire agreement. According to the New York Times, the body was confirmed in terms of identification. The reaction from Israel for families of dozens of hostages who remain in Gaza, the death of Sinwar brought both satisfaction and trepidation that the captives who remain could be killed immediately, or what would happen to them, their fate being unknown. In terms of Hamas leadership, Mr. Sinwar's death deals a significant blow to the militant organization's leadership, and there's a question about who will rise up or what this means in terms of the remaining leaders of the militant group. Israeli President Isaac Herzog responded to the death of Sinwar and said that this presents a significant window of opportunity, that now the priority is the seeking of the return of the hostages and the remaining elimination of Hamas. That was a statement made today. Top U.S. officials have renewed for calls to pursue an end to the war in Gaza. Vice President Kamala Harris said that Sinwar's death gives an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. And President Joe Biden said it's time to move towards a ceasefire, and that Secretary of State Blinken will be sent to Israel within days. Netanyahu, on the other hand, is promising more war, dashing hopes that after the killing of Sinwar, the war would come to a quick end. According to Reuters, a quote of his response, he said, "The war, my dear ones, is not yet over. We have before us a great opportunity to stop the axis of evil and to create a different future," referring to Iran and militant allies across the region: Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. He also said Sinwar's death marked the beginning of the end. Sinwar was the third of 3 Hamas leaders to be killed since the International Criminal Court issued warrants for their arrest. President Biden congratulated Netanyahu on Sinwar's death on the phone. A White House readout said that Biden and Netanyahu discussed how to use this moment to bring the hostages home and to bring the war to a close. However, no one has any real illusions that Netanyahu intends to do anything to bring the fighting to an end prior to the U.S. elections, as an outcome will be a significant factor in determining his next steps. Netanyahu is holding out for a Trump win, which would be significantly in his favor, much more so than a win by Kamala Harris. Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, meanwhile, vowed to escalate fighting against Israel and its backer Iran in the spirit of resistance. That's a direct quote. They said it would be strengthened by the death of their Palestinian ally Sinwar in Gaza. While this was happening, Israeli attacks on aid convoys in Gaza persisted, according to the UN. The Biden administration warned Israel this week. We've been talking about this, that Washington would suspend military assistance if humanitarian aid flows to Gaza did not significantly increase within the next 30 days. Israeli troops also opened fire on a UN aid convoy to North Gaza at least 4 times within the last 3 months, according to the UN and other humanitarian officials, damaging vehicles and narrowly missing staff members inside, according to a recent article. The Wall Street Journal also reported that while Israel was responding or waiting to respond to Iran's recent missile attack, the U.S. struck weapons stores in Yemen. This was early in the morning, Thursday morning, and Israeli airstrikes continued in Lebanon, killing dozens of civilians. So more about that U.S. military attack. The U.S. military struck 5 underground weapons facilities. Again, this was Thursday morning. Early in the morning, late Wednesday night, the U.S. military struck 5 underground weapons facilities in Yemen controlled by the Houthis, an attack that would serve as a warning to Iran. Defense Secretary Austin said that President Biden had ordered the strikes to degrade the Houthis' capabilities. Israeli forces once again fired at UN peacekeeping positions in South Lebanon. This was yesterday, Thursday, damaging a watchtower, according to the UN. Israeli foreign minister said the country had no intention of harming UNIFIL, and they accused Hezbollah of using UNIFIL personnel as human shields. There have been a number of incidents between Israeli soldiers and UN peacekeepers. Israel has said that UNIFIL should withdraw and remove themselves. The UN has refused to do so, as it's the purpose of the UN peacekeeping forces to act as a mediator between Israel and Hezbollah forces. The Lebanese foreign minister yesterday said that they filed a fresh complaint at the UN Security Council accusing Israel of violating Lebanon's territorial sovereignty and repeatedly targeting Lebanese army positions, aid groups, and civilians since October 3rd of this year. And Syria's military said that Israel wounded 2 civilians and damaged a military post in a strike earlier today in a coastal city of Latakia, which is about 60 miles north of the Lebanese border. The IDF also called for residents of 23 villages in South Lebanon to evacuate dozens of miles northward. These are additional evacuation orders to the ones that have happened in previous weeks. And Lebanon's caretaker prime minister said today that he rejected Iranian interference in the Lebanese matter after the Speaker of Iran's parliament said that Tehran was ready to negotiate with France to implement a UN resolution concerning South Lebanon. The Biden administration yesterday announced temporary legal status for Lebanese citizens that are already in the United States, citing efforts to achieve lasting stability and security across the Israel-Lebanon border. Today in Gaza, an Israeli airstrike on a UN school that has been turned into a shelter in northern Gaza killed 22 people and wounded dozens. This was according to local medics. The Israeli military said it was conducting a precision strike on an operational meeting for Hamas and Islamic Jihad. You will recall that there is an evacuation order on all of North Gaza. The reports that we have been hearing from that area is that people are not able to be evacuated. The Israeli military has declared that the entire area is a hostile zone. That's also the area where both St. Porphyrius Church and the Latin Catholic Church are located. Israel has barred entry to medical specialists seeking to support clinics in Gaza. According to the World Health Organization, over 50 specialized personnel have been denied entry into Gaza. This is the first incident in which Israel has denied entire organizations the ability to participate in relief efforts in Gaza. Israeli airstrikes killed 11 Palestinians in Gaza City yesterday. That is also in North Gaza, according to medics, while Israeli forces sent tanks to Jabalia in the north as well. Palestinians are facing a spike in Israeli demolition orders in East Jerusalem. This seems to be a consistent pattern of displacement and demolition. We see it in North Gaza, we see it in East Jerusalem, we see it in the West Bank, and we see it in South Lebanon. Israel has said that they did send 30 trucks carrying humanitarian aid, food, water, medical equipment sent from abroad that crossed into North Gaza through Erez after undergoing meticulous security checks. According to the U.S., they've said that they've seen some improvement in food aid delivery to northern Gaza in recent days. It's like saying 0 to 1. Well done. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is presenting a post-war Gaza plan based on ideas developed by Israel and the UAE. Several White House and State Department officials are concerned that it would marginalize the Palestinian Authority president and government. President Biden and Vice President Harris have hoped the Gaza war would fade in the final weeks of the presidential race, but fresh Israeli military offenses are making that impossible. And Egypt's president replaced his powerful spy chief who had played an instrumental role in brokering Gaza ceasefire and hostage negotiations previously. In Israel, and this is quite significant, 2 armed men dressed in military fatigues entered into Israel from Jordan and opened fire at Israeli soldiers in the Dead Sea area. They wounded 2 people before being shot and killed by Israeli forces. A Jordanian source told Al Jazeera the assailants were not connected to the Jordanian army, as it's different military uniforms, but Jordanian authorities have not yet responded to the attack publicly. And in response to an invitation circulated by Netanyahu's Likud party to an event titled Preparing for the Settlement in Gaza, a tour held near the Gaza border that's happening today for organizers. This is all about the resettlement of Gaza. The head of the councils, the Sha'ar HaNegev Council, said he would not allow an event calling for Jewish settlement in Gaza to take place within his council limits. In the United States, the Pentagon officials said that they're concerned about the flow of U.S. weapons to allies and that it would hurt the U.S.'s ability to respond if a new conflict is to arise. Army officials have said they announced that at an annual conference that happened this week. So that's the news as the week comes to an end. It's now Shabbat in Israel. Might God go before us in our continued efforts towards peace.